Hope everybody's doing great. Vlad, JC. We got the Minnesota Twins preview this year. Shout out to you. If you're a Twins fan or a Minnesota fan, beautiful place, beautiful stadium. Love Target Field. And we both, spoiler alert, really like your team this year and think that you guys will be all right. Let's talk about the offseason additions. Kind of a quiet offseason for Minnesota. No really big splashes, I wouldn't say, but I don't think they really needed to. They picked up Ty France and Harrison Bader, two former Reds. From watching these guys play, Vlad, what can you tell Twins fans about who is going to be in their lineup?
Yeah, I don't know if France's deal is like guaranteed or not, so it's still TBD if he like makes the team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If he does, it's like a average, maybe slightly below league average hitter. He'll like hit for some power, not very fast. He's a really bad defender, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And then Bader is kind of like not the opposite, but Bader is like a Gold Glove defender in the outfield.
Yeah.
It really depends on the year if he's going to hit or not.
Yep.
More of like a platoon hitter at least. He might play a little bit more than that, but he really only hits lefties decently. He'll have a little bit of power here and there, but it's more of like depth pieces, rounding out the edges, which I kind of think that's what the Twins really need right now besides health. I know they're in a weird spot right now because they were put up for sale and I think they said that they were trying to get something done before opening day with the sale of the team, and that's why they haven't been spending recently in the last 2 years or whatever it was. But
yeah.
Whenever this new owner does come in, you'll see them spend more, I think. And I'm just glad that they didn't trade away any of their big pieces just in the short term because ownership or whatever. So I think the run it back is kind of a good thing this year.
Absolutely. And then can you talk about the one kind of mainstay that they lost in Max Kepler and two guys that were just there for a year and Santana and Kyle Farmer?
Yeah, I mean, Kepler was the longest tenured Twin before he left. He signed there as an international guy in like 2012, I want to say, from Germany. Yeah, I mean, he's just been like a focal point of their lineup ever since he's been up. He's had ups and downs of years, and it was 2019. He was like arguably like a top 10 hitter in the American League that year, which is pretty ridiculous to say. But he's off to Philly now. I don't think they'll miss him too much, given that they have two top 40 prospects in the outfield. And then Carlos Santana, somehow still good. He's like 39, 40 now.
Crazy.
He finally won his first Gold Glove last year. He hit really well for them, actually. So it's kind of a bummer to see him go back to Cleveland for round 3. But and then Kyle Farmer, they have so many young infielders now. They got Brooks Lee, Edward Julian, Austin Martin who play infield, and then Jose Miranda and all the starters. Not really much of a role for Farmer anymore. But
couldn't have said it better myself. I will say, though, it's crazy. Baseball is such an interesting sport to me just because at the major league level, how it's so hard to predict. Like we saw it last year with Corbin Carroll, even though he didn't have that bad of a season, I guess. But it's just interesting to me how people can peak one year and then the next year just go down so far. It's not like basketball where once a guy has, although it happens sometimes in basketball, but normally once a guy has a breakout year, they're going to keep playing at that superstar level. Like we saw with Jalen Brunson this year, kind of had that breakout year and he's kept it going. But baseball, can think of so many examples where guy has an amazing year and then falls flat. So let's hope that this doesn't happen with some of the Twins players this year. Although this guy's been pretty consistent, Carlos Correa, maybe a Hall of Famer. I know he has the whole cheating scandal thing, but what do you think about that question? You can answer that briefly, and then what do you think that Correa is going to bring to the table this year? Will he meet these FanGraphs projections, or will he fall short, or will he exceed them?
Yeah, I mean, I think the whole scandal is, I think everyone's kind of put that past now, including like just the entire league. So I don't really think that'll affect him for a Hall of Fame case. It would be different. If it was like steroids or something that like he did, but it's a collective thing, and they never really like proved them, I guess, to do it or whatever. So I wouldn't really count that against him. You kind of know what you're getting from him, at least like to an extent. He's going to be probably a slightly above average hitter, and he'll be elite in the field. It's funny, I'm going to say this like 5 times for a couple of these players, but he's got to stay on the field.
Yeah.
That's like a theme of the Twins. But yeah, I would not be shocked if he puts up a 4-win, 5-win season if he's healthy and on the field, because he's a great player.
Yeah, 100% agree. I do like Carlos Correa's game. Very solid hitter, great fielder as well. Will say it does surprise me him being on the Twins. I think this is his third or fourth year on the Twins, and especially because he did have a deal. I think it was to the New York Mets or the Giants or somewhere before that injury stuff happened. He just seems like a big market guy to me, and I know Minnesota is not a really small market, but it's definitely not of the caliber of the Mets or the Dodgers. So I'm glad Correa has kind of carved out a home for him and himself in Minnesota, and I hope he'll stay for a little while. Royce Lewis. This is one of my favorite players in the league. I'll talk about him. 2017, we were both very young, and I wanted him over Hunter Green. I hoped that he would fall to us. Obviously, we're both happy with our selections right now, but he's had a tough career. He's battled through injuries, battled the bust kind of label, but he's really been able to carve out a nice career for himself. He's clutch. I remember him hitting that home run. I think it was his first at-bat in the playoffs against the Blue Jays, and that kind of set the tone for the rest of that series. Can you give us some input on Royce's trajectory?
Yeah, I mean, him and the guy we're going to talk about after this, the two guys by far that I feel the worst for in baseball. They just cannot stay on the field. It's unbelievable how much they get hurt.
Yep.
However, when Lewis is on the field and he's healthy, he sometimes looks like he's like a top 5 player in baseball. Like,
yes.
Comes off the injured list and hits like 5 home runs in a week. And he had this, I don't know the exact numbers, but by far, every time he comes up with the bases loaded, it's a grand slam.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was like, I want to say it was like 7 for like 11 or 7 for 13 or something like that. Bases loaded. And like 4 or 5 of them were grand slams. So I don't know. He can be a streaky player. At the same time, you don't really know what's going on with him. Like, I feel like the end of last year where he really struggled, I just want to say that he had another injury going on and was just trying to play through that because they were trying to make the wild card and playoff push. So I don't really know, but we've seen what he can do in the playoffs. The home run, like you said, against Kevin Gausman, and then he hit another one. Really, I don't want to say he carried them in the playoffs, but he was definitely a huge factor of why they won. So I think the range of outcomes for Royce is very steep. I think at his ceiling, he could win like an MVP, and I think at his floor, he could play like 5 games and be injured the entire season.
Absolutely. And that kind of goes with the next guy, too, like you mentioned, Byron Buxton. One of the most frustrating players to watch, not because of him. He seems like a good dude, but just because he is incredible when healthy. I mean, the most jaw-dropping plays I've seen out of anybody in the MLB from Byron Buxton. I mean, he is an insane athlete with some great power. And I know he might not play center for them this year. I think he's set to DH unless I'm mistaken. No, Fangraphs has him playing center. Last year, they tried to throw him at DH, but when he's healthy, he's a great center fielder. Do you need to say anything more about Buxton?
Yeah, last year the whole DH thing was just to try and keep him on the field, and it like kind of worked, but eventually you gotta like play center field. Like if you're that good at it, you gotta play.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think he'll be just primarily center field. I think the DH will be between like Trevor Larnach or Jose Miranda this year. But yeah, everyone talks about like the biggest what if players. Like he can be the worst player in Major League Baseball, but if he plays 150 games, I would just be so happy for him. So absolutely. I would love to see a full season of Buxton.
110%. All right, we'll go through this next guy. A little bit, I don't know, not much for me to say about Ryan Jeffers. When I was in college this past spring, there were some Twins fans that were calling him the best catcher in the league. And there are times where he looks like it because he can really swing the bat. Reminds me a bit of the Mitch Garver days sometimes in Minnesota when he's up to the dish. He's got some nice power. But what do you think of the man behind the dish, Ryan Jeffers?
Yeah, the difference between the first half and second half for Jeffers was kind of night and day. First half, he raked, and I was telling everyone that he should be the all-star catcher for the American League. And then the second half, it was really bad, and Christian Vasquez ended up playing more than him, which nothing against Christian Vasquez. He's making $10 million a year, but Jeffers should be the better player.
Absolutely, 100%. And then we move on to the pitching staff, which, to my eyes, is stacked. To be honest, I would love to have this pitching staff. I mean, I would take it 10 times out of Chris Paddock, who was he was good in San Diego, only 29 years old. Simeon Woods Richardson, a nice prospect. Bailey Ober, a taller guy has really nice projections for Fangraph. Joe Ryan, a guy who I really like, has good projections. But their ace is Pablo Lopez. Pablo Lopez, I think of him as just an innings eater. He's probably the highest innings guy that we've covered so far, projected to throw 192. A 3.70 ERA, 3.5 WAR. I wasn't too enthused when the Twins got him in that trade, but he's worked out for them, I would say, pretty nicely. So, what do you think about Pablo and the rest of the staff?
Yeah, he's an interesting guy because it felt like when he took the ball in the playoffs in 2023, like my confidence just went through the roof. You know, he's one of those guys where he gets the ball in a big time game and you're like, okay, we got a good chance to win today. But last year was just really strange because some of his numbers were just off. Like he allowed so many home runs. And normally he's a guy that can command really well. And last year he just didn't. So that resulted in a lot of middle pitches, and middle pitches, you get home runs.
Sure.
So I don't know. He's just been a little bit of a inconsistent pitcher like throughout his career. So you don't really know what you're going to get from him. But at the same time, I would definitely give him the ball in a big game. So it's definitely an interesting dynamic. And then the rest of the rotation, I also really like. Joe Ryan was injured at the end of last year, but very solid pitcher, great number 2. Bailey Ober's going to be good. I think you can pencil in those 3 as their top 3, and then the 4 and 5 will probably be between Chris Paddock, Simeon Woods Richardson, David Festa, and Zebby Matthews, if I had to guess. I personally love Zebby Matthews. He is a guy who does not walk anybody, throws strikes all the time. Came up last year. I want to say he started in single A last year and made it to the big leagues. But he was always just known as kind of a command first guy and threw like 94, 95. But he pitched the other day in spring. I want to say he hit 97 or 98. So if he is a velo jump, even just a couple ticks up, he could be really solid.
Sure. Absolutely. Zebby Matthews, definitely a guy to watch out for. He's projected as the best pitcher in their AAA system by Fangraphs, but I could see him being up there. Another guy, not on the projected players list, but they have a few guys in AAA that could see, kind of making that jump. David Festo, we mentioned them. Louis Varland is a guy that can come and help the bullpen a little bit, but their bullpen, as projected by Fangraphs, looks very, very good. The 2 guys that are the forefront of it are Griffin Jacks and Yohan Duran, who I have here. He's kind of just the face of the Twins bullpen. If you were to name one reliever in the league for an average MLB fan, a lot of them would name Duran just because of his 102 mile an hour cutter, which is insane to think about. But what can you say about this bullpen and especially their top 2 guys?
Yeah, stuff-wise, Duran and Griffin Jacks might be top 10 in the league, both of them. Like you said, Duran can come at you with 103, and then he runs a splinker at you at 99. And then if that's not good enough for you, he runs a curveball in it like 90. Not sure how you hit that. He struggled a little bit last year because couldn't really find the zone. And then I would put Griffin Jacks in the argument as best non-closer reliever in baseball, up there with Cade Smith. The stuff is just off the charts, and I personally was lobbying for him to try the whole starting thing this coming year, just because he has 5 pitches that he can rock with. I understand I'm not wanting to do that with the depth that they have, but in the future, maybe he could stretch out as a starter. But the stuff is off the charts, and he really won them some big games last year. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely a guy who could make a difference for the Twins this season. Now, just like some other teams we've covered, prospects are very important, and Vlad is one of the best prospect knowers in the country. However, it doesn't take a genius to know that Walker Jenkins is really good. You see the number 3 prospect next to his name. You've probably heard about him a little bit. But just for the Twins fans who want to know what Walker Jenkins is all about, what would you tell them?
Yeah, he's about as well-rounded as you can get. It's crazy because he's so polished, but he was drafted as a high schooler. So it's crazy to think about what he would have been if he went to college and played. But he's kind of the whole package, to be honest. I mean, he's not number 3 by accident. Can really hit the ball, doesn't strike out, hits it all across the field, can play defense, can throw. I hate to say it again, but he was hurt a little bit last year. It seems to be a common theme among the Twins. But whenever he comes up, he's going to be a factor right away, and same as the next guy as well.
Absolutely, 100%. Only 20 years old, just turned 20 years old a few days ago. He's definitely going to be a problem in the future. I watched some of his highlights before recording, and like you said, whole package. Another guy who might not be as good or as highly touted as Jenkins, but still number 37. He's a guy that Fangraphs has coming up this season. Emmanuel Rodriguez. They have him starting the year in AAA. What can you tell us about Emmanuel Rodriguez?
Yeah, he is a very interesting player because he swings a ton, but he doesn't strike out a whole lot, which is kind of
very interesting.
strange. Like he still strikes out at a fairly decent clip, but he also walks a ton too. So this past year in the minors, he got all the way up to AAA. Before I go into the stats, another guy, he's been hurt. So it's ridiculous how bad of luck this organization has. Kind of crazy. But another thing to note, Walker Jenkins made it to AAA last year as well for like the final series. But last year, across all leagues, Rodriguez, 280 average, 1,026 OPS, 9 home runs, 51 walks, 62 strikeouts in 47 games and 209 plate appearances. Good player. Like I said, swings a lot, but when he hits the ball, it is crushed. He can play defense. He can move. He can probably play a center field, especially if Buxton gets hurt, which, might be more of a win than if at this point. But yeah, he's such a talented player. He's just exciting to watch. I want to say his first plate appearance, or maybe first or second plate appearance in AAA, he had an inside the park grand slam, which was awesome to see. But yeah, very exciting player. I would expect him to come up this year. I would say fairly early if he's healthy. And then Jenkins, I don't know that you'll see him in the first half, but 1, if there's injuries, 2, if they're making a playoff push. A guy as talented as him, I don't think you can just leave him in the minors.
100% agree on both of those. Rodriguez, 21 going on 22. Another guy that'll turn 22 in a few days. He's a guy that I've heard a lot about just because of the talent that's there, the potential that he has. Like you said, swings a lot. Play nice defense. Honestly, this 82 and 80 last year for the Twins kind of shocked me a little bit. Just because, of their talent. They kind of had a similar team last year. Obviously, they lost 3 guys from last year's team, gained 2, had some injury concerns, of course, but kind of melted down in the second half of the season a little bit. But I think it'll be very interesting to watch this team this year, especially if we didn't really talk about them that much, but obviously Austin Martin might be a lost hope after looking at him, but guys like Brooks Lee, who a middle infielder out of Cal Poly, still have some potential to have a kind of a breakout season. Kind of depends. They just need everybody to stay healthy and play well. And if that happens, I think this can be a really good team that can contend in the American League. So can you say a little bit more, Vlad, about our pick, why we picked them to go 86 and 76 as opposed to Fangraphs 83 and 79?
Yeah, the biggest thing for me is, people are going to knock their offseason, because they have such a good team and say, oh,
right.
Like, why didn't they make a splash? Well, I already explained that part. But I think the biggest thing is their fall off in August and September was like monumentally bad. Yeah. And they still only missed the playoffs by like 2 games.
Yeah.
So I can't see that happening again. I still think the Guardians are going to be good, but I think they got slightly worse. Hopefully that doesn't come back to bite me. And then the Tigers just went on a ridiculous run to make the playoffs.
Yeah, they
Just
did. That was
winning,
ridiculous. Crazy.
and they barely snuck in at that. And I still don't think their lineup is that good. So I'm just counting on a lot of bounce backs and people staying healthy. A couple other guys, Trevor Larnach, really good last year, actually.
Yeah.
He's probably just going to be a DH. He can't really move that well, but he's a really good hitter. And then Matt Wallner, kind of the same deal, but he'll play some outfield. He also is one of those guys who just has a cannon.
Yeah.
I would say he's a little bit more of a platoon unless they try him against lefties this year, but he can hit 40 home runs and he also might strike out 40% of the time. So you might just have to live with that. But as a platoon guy last year, I want to say he was over 900 OPS. He's a good player. I think they have talent in every single position. Like you said, I love Brooks Lee. I think Edward Julian can still be good, even though last year is kind of a lost year for him. But I think they have talent at every spot. And then their farm system's pretty good too. Aside from these two, Luke Keyshaw is pretty good. He'll come up and be like a utility second base kind of guy for them eventually. So yeah, I think they have talent not only in the majors, but I would say they have a top 10, maybe top 7-ish farm system. So they're in good hands.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm very excited. I don't know about you, but I'm excited to watch this AL Central play out because, like you said, even though the Tigers, where that was a little fluky, I mean, they still have the potential, I guess, to make it back. So that's 4 teams with the potential to be first in this division. And especially because the AL is, I would say, more wide open than the National League as far as not having a clear favorite. I'm not saying the Dodgers are guaranteed to win it all, but they're definitely the favorites, I would say. But yeah, and AL Central, going to be a good watch. Twins fans, hope y'all have enjoyed this so far. We're going to get to Royce Lewis. Just real quickly, why do you think Royce Lewis is the MVP of this team?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think his ceiling's the highest out of most of these guys. You could argue Byron Buxton. But I think when Royce is right, I think he can carry an offense and just win you a game by himself. And he's also good in the field too. It's just an all-around player. Again, said it for like 6 guys at this point. It's a matter of him staying on the field. But when he's healthy and when he's right, he can be really good. And he's still rather young too. So I think based off upside, he's a pretty easy pick. And then just one more note about the Twins as a whole. I think the best part about the Twins is just like I mentioned, their talent depth. If they were to lose a Correa or a Lewis, I'm not saying they would still win the division or anything like that, but I still think they'd be like a 500-ish level team versus I feel like if the Royals were to lose Bobby Witt, they're one Bobby Witt injury away from winning like 74 games. And I just think they're a little bit more reliant on one guy versus the Twins have 5 or 6 guys that can win you a game. And that's not counting pitchers either.
Yeah. The depth is awesome. Twins fans, we hope the best for you. Leave a comment if you want to have a dialogue with us about this. We would appreciate it. Worked hard on this, so we'd appreciate if you maybe gave it a like. That'd be great. And we will see you.